But unlike Mitch McConnell, who said that Trump's conduct was a disgraceful dereliction of duty, or GOP primary runner-up Nikki Haley, who said Trump, quote, went down a path he shouldn't have and we shouldn't have followed him. And most of the rest of the Republican Party, Liz Cheney has been unwavering in the belief that Donald Trump is unfit for future office, that he would be a threat to the state of our democracy if he ever returned to the White House. The ex-president has done nothing to prove Liz Cheney wrong. In fact, he's done the opposite of that, pledging to pardon the January 6 rioters, to prosecute his political opponents, including Liz Cheney. He's claimed the 2024 election is rigged if he loses fair and square. But if Donald Trump made a Cheney endorsement possible, it is the Harris campaign and Harris herself who sealed the deal. Liz Cheney's threat assessment of Donald Trump, combined with the existence of a viable alternative, an experienced vice president whose views, especially when it comes to America's place in the world, are firmly in the tradition of previous American presidents. Here's how Liz Cheney explained her endorsement of the vice president last month.
You know, I have never viewed this as a policy election.
Right.
But I think that it's a very important point. If you look at Vice President Harris's speech, for example, at the Democratic Convention, it is a speech that Ronald Reagan could have given. It's a speech that George Bush could have given. It's very much an embrace and an understanding of the exceptional nature of this great nation, a love of America, a recognition that America is a special place, a recognition that we all have to work together to ensure that. When it comes to fundamental alliances, when it comes to the importance of NATO, for example, and how important it is for the United States to lead in the world, we've seen a sea change. We now have a Republican Party that is embracing isolationism, that is embracing Putin, that, you know, we've seen just in the last week, the Republican vice presidential nominee willing to appear, willing to be interviewed by Tucker Carlson, who is platforming pro-Nazis, is himself pushing pro-Nazi propaganda. That is not the party of Ronald Reagan. And I believe strongly that if you're talking about a national security set of issues and you care about America's leadership role in the world, a vote for Vice President Harris is the right vote to make this time around.
It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Political strategist, MSNBC senior analyst Matt Dowd is back with us. Here with me at the table, New York Times editorial board member and MSNBC political analyst Mara Gay's here. And NBC News correspondent Yamiche Alcindor is at the Harris-Cheney event in Ripon, Wisconsin for us. Yamiche, I start with you. Tell me what is unfolding right behind you.
Well, good afternoon, Nicolle, from Ripon, Wisconsin, which is the birthplace of the Republican Party. Vice President Harris is going to be here just a few hours from now with Liz Cheney, of course, the former representative that was really pushed out of office by former President Donald Trump because she broke with him on the issue of January 6th, saying that he was a threat to democracy. Now, the thesis for this event is really emblazoned on a big, large billboard that everyone in this area can see, and it says "Country over Party." That is the message that Vice President Harris wants these Republican voters that she's courting here to take away from this. She really wants to underscore that she's reaching out to conservative voters, reaching out to former Trump supporters. I just broke a story that is showing that just in the last few hours, 2 new ads were put out featuring a man named Matthew, who was a former Trump supporter who is now explaining why he's going to be voting for Harris. So that really tells you that this is part of a larger strategy by the Harris campaign to lean into Republican voters. I also want to play for you what I've heard just in walking around Ripon today. I talked to 2 men who have told me that they voted for Republicans in the past. Take a listen to what they told me now.
With the way things went with the last election, the fact that Trump didn't admit that he lost, I would definitely say that I am not for any of that.
I think Trump has destroyed the Republican Party.
How so?
Because it's gone. You have a mega party now. Even the Republicans are leaving the Republican Party.
What do you think of Liz Cheney and Harris coming here together?
I think that's a good sign. So,
A sign of what?
well, it's a good sign that some Republicans are going to vote Democrat, even though they disagree with the policy. because they just can't get on board with Trump.
Now, Nicolle, this is a deep red part of Wisconsin, which, of course, is a critical battleground state. And I should tell you, I talked to a number of former Republicans who say they're voting for Vice President Harris, who didn't want to go on camera. So the numbers were bigger than the people who were willing to stand up and say it on national television. So I just want to underscore that there are a lot of people here who say they just do not recognize the Republican Party, especially after January 6th. So this is part of a bigger campaign, as I said, by the Harris campaign to really push out and target Republican voters. And I want to say one other thing, which is, if people are wondering, is this sort of the first of many? It is. We learned that former, of course, GOP chair Liz Cheney, as well as Trump White House aides Alyssa Farah, Cassidy Hutchinson, and Sarah Matthews, they're all going to be getting together next week in Pennsylvania to do a fireside chat. Those are all Republican women who voted for or were working for Donald Trump. We're going to be coming together. So we're going to see more and more of this as the election day gets nearer.
Matt Dowd, just jump in on Yamish's excellent reporting and interviews about this dynamic of Republicans who are telling journalists like Yamish and maybe pollsters as well what we heard Liz articulate in that interview with John Carl at ABC, that for her, it's not necessarily a policy election. It's about the future of the democracy. Talk about how that sort of changes or improves the coalition that Vice President Harris needs to prevail.
Sure, and I just want to put an emphasis on the historical nature of this. The Republican Party was formed there in 1854, basically because the people that were anti-slavery had no room left. They felt they had no place left in their own party, and they had to start another party against, at that time, the Democrats and the Know Nothing Party. And so there's so many Republicans, as you know, that have felt no home anywhere. And they basically are doing something brand new, like the Republicans in 1854, and they're actually helping the opposing party. I mean, to me, this is akin to Barry Goldwater after the election in 1964, going in and working in the administration of LBJ. That's what this is akin to. A diehard conservative going to work for somebody that he was diametrically opposed to. To me, as I watch this unfold, there is actually three things that I think that are sort of strategically important about this. One, and you and I have had this conversation, I think all of these sort of things sends a signal, a permission structure to independents that basically says the Vice President Harris is not somebody you need to be afraid of. She's not somebody that's so radical that she's going to go off the deep end in this, that Liz Cheney sort of gives those independents a path to vote for her. The other thing are soft Republicans who may think it's a bridge too far to go and vote for the vice president, but actually may, because of this, skip the top of the ticket, not vote for. They don't like Donald Trump. They want to vote for a Republican, but maybe it's too far of a bridge to take to vote for the vice president. This may give them a chance. This may give them a message to basically say you can skip the top of the ticket. The other thing that I don't think has been talked about enough is in 2016 and in 2020, we talked endlessly about the hidden, quote, the hidden Trump vote that was not captured by polls in the end, that there was a couple of 1 or 2 points or a point and a half that people that were reluctant to say they were supporting him, but then voted for him. I actually believe that the hidden vote this time is the Vice President Harris vote, that Republicans who are reluctant to tell somebody on the phone that they're going to vote for a Democrat because they've been voting Republican their entire life now may be in the confines of the ballot blindly where nobody knows about it, will vote for her. And so to me, the odds are that the hidden vote this time is Harris Republican vote, not Donald Trump vote.
So, Matt Dowd, I had that theory ahead of the midterms that there was a hidden Roe vote, and it wasn't just women, that there are, of course, some men who are indifferent to the decisions that a woman makes, but there are many men who are husbands and fathers and sons who are very invested in a woman having access to safe options in the occasion of an unwanted or unviable pregnancy. And I would like you to say a little bit more about the manosphere, because I feel like the toxic masculine appeal of Trump and Vance gets a whole lot of press, but the possibility that there are a whole bunch of male voters out there who aren't feeling seen or spoken to in our analysis seems viable as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because there's this whole conversation, as you know, in the MAGA world, calling any of us that happen to be compassionate or care about other people as beta. They call us beta. No matter if we own a gun, go hunting, drive a truck, live in Texas, no matter what we are, we're beta because we actually believe in the common good and we believe in helping other people in the course of this. I think there is a number of men in this country that don't want to be defined in the way that MAGA defines them. They obviously want to be, they want to be perceived as strong and courageous and brave and, willing to take chances and all those sorts of things. But they also care about their fellow human beings. They care about their wives. They care about their daughters. They care about the women in their community. And as you're right to say, there was a hidden Roe vote, and it showed up, as we know, in that referendum in Kansas, where out of the blue, it was overwhelmingly in support of pro-choice when no poll caught it. It showed up in state after state after state in key races in 2022 and in special elections where the polling underreported what was about to happen. And I think it caught women in the polling, but what it didn't catch was men who on that day said, all of this conversation about who's a man and who's not a man and who's strong and who's weak, actually the strongest men support the strong women in their life. And I think that's what you saw show up.
Let me show you how the Harris campaign is communicating with these voters in their paid advertising. This is a new Harris ad.
I can't go to work and mess up something and then blame my staff. Who does that? Well, who does that? Donald Trump does that. I voted for Donald Trump and I went to his inauguration in 2016. We tried it for 4 years. It just didn't work. And it's time to move on. Or it's going to be more of the same and the middle class is going to suffer. Take it from me. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm still a Republican. Kamala's trying to help the American people, especially the American middle class. I think she's going to do a great job for people like me.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
If you came from outer space and you landed here and you saw that ad, you'd be like, wait, what? What is going on?
What is happening?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, it's interesting that we're looking at these male voters who are Republicans who are saying, enough. This isn't about strength. This is about not wanting to be completely insane and live in a world of chaos. Because J.D. Vance the other night really did his best to launder Trumpism as something that is normal and has a soft face and is perfectly respectable. And, it's so funny, we talk about the politics of respectability, usually in a different context, but J.D. Vance is really doing his best to bring respectability back to MAGA politics. And I think as long as you have Republican voters, especially white men, and then folks like Liz Cheney to come along and say, actually, this isn't normal. This isn't acceptable. I may disagree with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on every issue except the one that matters in this election, which is democracy, which is supporting rights of other Americans, then this is not something that's acceptable to me. And I think Liz Cheney, as a truth teller, is especially important because as long as she's out there telling the truth, it becomes much harder to normalize Trumpism. She's also done something that I actually think is secondary in this case, but of interest to me, certainly, and has possibilities for political organizing in the future, which is she has, in embracing Kamala Harris, a Black and South Asian woman running for president, she has finally given the modern Republican Party's seal of patriotism, not only to her political opponent, but to Black Americans. And that really isn't something that we required as Americans